Motone Customs have had me sort of pulling my hair out over the last week or so, because it seems every time I blink they release another part, and the wow factor of those parts seems to increase with every new release. Now in actual fact, I knew these parts were coming. They've been in development for well over a year, and most of them are aimed at all the water-cooled twins, not just the Bobber or the Bobber Black. And I think the sudden influx of parts at the moment is basically that because all these projects were started at the same time a year or so ago, they're all sort of coming to fruition now. But it's leaving me in a position that I'm sort of producing a video, and as happened last week, whilst I was actually editing the video ready for posting the following day, I received another package from Motone which contains some parts that related to the parts I was actually producing that video for. And I felt as though maybe they should have been included in that video, but I didn't have time to reshoot and re-edit, so it just went up as it was. And this in particular related to those Webco inspired carb covers. A part that initially I wasn't too sure about, but once I got it on the bike, I loved it. Now in actual fact, all the parts that I'm going to show you today, you have already seen. I've shown them in previous videos. But Motone wanted to produce the ultimate edition of these particular parts, and a contrast cut version of each one seemed like a logical way to go. But in a way, Motone were victims of their own success. In their pursuit of perfection in creating high pressure die cast parts, they actually made this very difficult for themselves. Now it must be 6 months ago at least they started sending me pictures through of some of the prototypes that they were working on, using pre-production examples of these parts. And because these parts had been cast, the normal method of creating a contrast finish wasn't possible. All these parts are covered in curves and contours, and that's what sets them apart from what other people are producing. And experiments with CNC machining or putting these parts on a lathe to turn them down to create the contrast just didn't look right. Or at least they didn't to Motone. To my eye they looked okay. But because Motone wasn't happy with them, they had to find a new method of creating a contrast cut version of these parts. And this turned out to be mind-bogglingly difficult. Now what Motone didn't like about automated methods of producing this finished is that they all looked too perfect, too factory made, too generic, and they wanted to get away from that. They wanted a more organic finish, something that showed attention to detail, something that can't be achieved by simply pressing a button on a machine. And they came to the conclusion that manual dexterity and pure hand-to-eye coordination was the only way to go about it. They were going to hand finish each and every one of these parts individually. But in order to do that, they needed to create a system, a method of doing that would produce consistent results. And after months of trial and error, they eventually came up with a process that produces this. And this. And this. And it can also do this. As well as this. Now, when I opened that box last week, I couldn't believe the quality of the finish on these parts. It is quite astounding in the flesh. Because they're hand finished, no two parts are exactly the same. Each piece is an individual work of art in its own right. The process that they eventually settled on is a complicated one. First of all, the parts are powder coated black to achieve the same textured finish as Triumph's own engine parts. Then the parts that are to remain black are individually masked off by hand. And I'm not quite sure what material they are using to mask them off, but what this achieves is a clean cut edge where it meets the contrast polished areas, and it also prevents the grinding and polishing process from damaging the paint that's to be left behind. The piece then goes through a series of grinding and polishing processes by hand, which to my mind, with some experience with this kind of work, must take a ridiculous amount of time for each individual piece. The end result is a truly classic monochrome work of art in cast aluminium, which I believe has no equal anywhere else on the market. The polishing is carried out to a mirror finish standard, and I for one would be quite happy to have these things stuck on the wall in my office, let alone my bike. When Motone first told me what they intended doing, I believed that they had completely lost the plot and that the men in the white coats were going to come and take them away. But I have to say I was wrong. The approach that they've taken on this has produced a truly remarkable and individual art piece that I for one am very proud to adorn my bike with. I will leave a link in the video description for Motone's website so that you can have a look at these parts yourself. But one thing that I will say is a photograph and video really does not do these parts any justice. That's all I've got time for today. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video and that you found it useful. If you have enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I will of course be back next week, so until then, ride safely and I'll see you soon.